Alright guys, this is part 2. We're going to be jumping right into the final steps in making a clip or video game footage look more cinematic. So sit back and enjoy. The fourth and final thing to make a clip look more cinematic is to render it in a frame rate that chops out a little bit of the frames and making it go in a way a little bit more slow motion, giving it a realistic look like we see in the movies. Every movie that looks really good is shot in 24p or 24 frames per second. This is what makes the movies again look really nice, but in gaming movies that you want to do, 24p is not something you truly want to do. Also, you can do it in 25 frames per second, 25p. But that's really a PAL format, not here in the United States. So standard films, again, 24p. Gaming, it's different. I'm going to explain this to you, so bear with me. Halo's frame rate for the game itself is 30 frames per second. You notice if you look to the right too quick, or if you're falling and you're kind of just jittering around, if you have 10 sensitivity, you'll see a lot of motion blur in the game. That's because the game wasn't meant to be played that high of a frame rate, because it has a lot, has really good graphics. So what Bungie did is made it a 30 frame per second game to avoid any kind of crashing. What you want to do for 30 frames per second, that's what you're initially recording in. If you drop the frame rate to 24p using a 30 frame per second video, it really just chops it up, and you see a lot of blur and a lot of backlag in a way. That might be a term I just made up, but I'll show you what I mean in pictures below. Let me go ahead and drag them in here for you. This is a screenshot of a render that I did while it was rendering to show you what it looks like when you render something in 24p that's shot in a 30 frames per second game. This is just the Spartan normally jumping. I'm going to tell you right now, it looks like shit. So I made a couple of render settings just to test that, and what I did to make it look a little bit better was do it in 50 frames per second. So if you render exact same screenshot of that frame, if you render that in 50p or 50 frames per second, I will drag and drop in and show you what it looks like. It looks like a little bit more progress. You still see the 3 Spartans in a way, but the upper one's more filled out. So when you're watching the video, you'll see just a little bit less lag. Not too much. So again, my final ruling on this, 50 frames per second, on a 30 frame per second game, looks kind of like shit. So the final one is 60 frames per second, which it is right here. And boom. When you render this film in 60 frames per second, you got one Spartan, and he's doing it all, which officially looks the best when you're rendering it. So even though we don't got the standard film frames per second in a Halo game, 60 frames per second still works, and as long as you use these effects, making it look personalized rather than just the gameplay itself, adding these bars, adding the cinematic corners, and adding the camera movement, then you got it. That's what it'll look like final rendering. Very nice. I'm going to show you guys all the videos, even comparing to Modern Warfare, so let's just throw that in here right now while we're at it. This is a standard Modern Warfare shot, because Modern Warfare, it's a little bit different as well. Its gameplay produces in 60 frames per second, so my capture card records every single detail of every movement, creating no motion blur at all when I play it in 60 frames per second. And again, no motion blur means that it doesn't look realistic. So I added a lot of effects, very similar effects, but instead of a bright, I added a gloomy effect in this next one, so here's what it looks like. So tell me what you think about that in the comments. That's one of my personal ones that I have presetted up. It's called Gloomy Shady, that's the one, because I have Gloomy Dark and Gloomy Shady. This is Gloomy Shady. So that's what the final clip of this Modern Warfare piece will be. So I'm going to be showing you guys in all of the frames per second. I'm going to be showing you guys everything, all videos I have. I have 3 Halo videos that I'm going to be showing you, and then after that I'm going to show you the Modern Warfare one. So what I want you guys to do is let me know which one you like better. My personal favorite for Modern Warfare, I would have to say, would be 50 frames per second, because it adds just a little bit, obviously 10 frames of motion blur, very, very subtly inside the 60 frame per second Modern Warfare footage. And that's my personal choice, what I would render Modern Warfare stuff in. Not montages, of course. Montages will always be 60 frames per second because you want to see every detail of what the kill is going to be. But for if I ever make a cinematic, which I don't know if I will or not, if I ever make a machinima in Modern Warfare, I will be using 50 frames per second. And then Halo after that, my personal favorite in Halo, of course, it would be 60 frames per second, double, the standard frame rate of Halo. Since it is 30 frames per second, it will automatically add motion blur, regardless of what I do. So me rendering it in 60 frames per second, and it adding its own motion blur, comes out very, very nicely. But yeah, I hope you guys learned a lot of editing, adding your own effects, adding, how to make a film look more cinematic. If you don't want to go back into the film, I'll put, the instructions and the information below of what you need to do, and so you don't have to watch this whole 30-minute video again. So let's go ahead and get to it. Okay, so the first clip that's about to be played is the raw Halo footage, unedited, just standard 60 frames per second. Alright, now this one coming up is the same clip, fully edited, produced in 24 frames per second. Alright, and now the next one coming up is the same clip, but in 50 frames per second. Alright, now the final one, this is the same clip, fully edited in 60 frames per second. Alright, now comes Modern Warfare. Here's the raw Modern Warfare clip, unedited in 60 frames per second. Here is the same clip, fully edited, in 24 frames per second. Here is the same clip, but this time it is in 25 frames per second. Again, same clip, this time it's in 50 frames per second. And finally, the same clip in 60 frames per second. Alright everybody, I hope you did notice the difference between all of them. My personal favorite one of the Halos was the 60 frames per second, and my personal favorite one of the Modern Warfare for cinematic purposes would be 50 frames per second, and for montage purposes would be 60 frames per second. So again, thank you all for bearing with me through this entire 40-minute tutorial or whatnot. So just leave a comment down there below on anything you see about either of the videos. You can check out part 1 again by clicking the link at the top left. If you want to check out my specific render settings, I can show you the video. It is one I made previously. You can click that in the top right. And for the bottom half, just be sure to subscribe, like, leave a comment. I'll try to answer them as much as possible. But my main goal was to just help you guys out and showing you guys the difference of edited footage and how to make video games look more cinematic. Thanks again, guys. Y'all take it easy.